He told his entire family I was lying about the pregnancy at Thanksgiving dinner while I sat there holding a $14 sparkling cider because I couldn't drink, and I just picked up my fork and cut into my turkey like he hadn't said a single word. 3 days later, the same hand that pointed at me across that table was shaking when he saw the name on my phone screen. And this Thanksgiving, his mom called me, not him, to ask if I needed anything for the nursery. Okay, so let me back up. His name is Marcus. We met in July at a mutual friend's backyard thing, the kind of party where someone brings a Bluetooth speaker and suddenly it's a whole event. He was standing by the cooler, holding a Corona, looking genuinely uncomfortable in the best way. Not in a brooding way. In a, I don't actually like parties, but I came for Derek way. I can respect that. We talked for like 2 hours next to that cooler. About nothing important. About how we both hate the way airports smell. About whether cereal or milk goes in first. Milk first, obviously, fight me. About how his dog was named after a TV show character. He refused to tell me which one until the third date. It was Walter White, by the way. The dog's name was Walter White. I should have taken that as a sign. We started dating officially in August. And look, the first 2 months were genuinely good. I'm not going to rewrite history and say there were massive red flags from day one, because there weren't. There were small ones. Quiet ones. The kind that are so easy to explain away when someone is making you laugh at 11 p.m. and showing up with coffee before you even ask. The small things were, he never introduced me as his girlfriend in front of his friends. Always just, this is Claire. Which, fine, we were new. But it happened enough times that I noticed. He had a habit of saying, "You're too sensitive," whenever I brought up something that bothered me. Not in a cruel way, more like a reflex. Like it was his default setting when he didn't want to engage. I counted it once. 4 times in 6 weeks. I stopped counting because it was making me anxious and I didn't want to be the girl who keeps score. He also talked about his ex. Her name was Jessica. More than felt normal for someone who was supposedly completely over her. Not obsessively. Just frequently. Jessica used to do this thing. That reminds me of when Jessica and I went there. I never said anything because I didn't want to seem insecure. Past me was such an idiot, you guys. I'm saying this with full love for past me, but genuinely. So, September. I find out I'm pregnant. I was in a Target bathroom, which is honestly the most unglamorous way to have your life change completely. I bought 3 tests because one felt like gambling. All 3 were positive before the 2 minutes were even up. I sat on the floor of that stall for a while. Just thinking. Just processing. We had been together for less than 3 months. I knew this was complicated. I knew this was a lot. But I want to be honest here, I wasn't devastated. Scared, yes. Overwhelmed, absolutely. But somewhere under all of that there was this small, stubborn feeling that I wasn't ready to call anything yet. I called Marcus from the Target parking lot. He was quiet for a long time. Like really quiet. I could hear him breathing. Then he said, "Are you sure it's mine?" And okay. I want to describe this moment accurately. Because it wasn't a dramatic movie moment. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I felt something go very still inside me. Like a room where someone just turned off all the background noise. I said, "Yes, Marcus. I'm sure." He said he needed time to think. I said okay. I drove home. I ate leftover pasta. I watched 2 episodes of a show I don't even remember. And somewhere around midnight, I let myself cry. Really cry, the ugly kind. Into my pillow so my roommate wouldn't hear. Then I pulled myself together and started figuring out what I actually needed, regardless of what Marcus decided. He called back the next morning. He said he was sorry for asking that. He said he was in shock. He said he wanted to be there. He came over that night with flowers. Not great flowers, gas station sunflowers, but flowers. And we talked for 3 hours and I thought, okay, this is hard, but maybe we can do this. And then November happened. His family does a big Thanksgiving. Like big. Both parents, for siblings, various partners, grandparents, aunts, uncles, probably 30 people in a house that fits 20. Marcus had been nervous about telling them, which I understood. I was nervous too. But we'd agreed, together, that Thanksgiving was the right time. Everyone would be there. We'd tell them together. It would be okay. I wore a rust-colored dress that I'd borrowed from my friend Mara. She said it made me look like fall itself, which was the nicest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. I felt good. As good as you can feel at 11 weeks pregnant, exhausted, walking into a house full of strangers who are about to become your family, whether you planned it or not. Dinner was fine at first. His mom, Linda, was genuinely warm to me. His youngest sister kept asking me about my job in this really sweet way. I was starting to relax. I had sparkling cider in a wine glass, so I didn't have to explain anything. $14 for a bottle that tasted like fancy grape juice, but it was worth it to just feel normal for a second. Then his older brother Derek made a toast. And in the middle of the toast, he just said it. Not carefully, not gently. He put his fork down, looked at his mom, and said, "Before Derek finishes, Claire says she's pregnant." Says she's pregnant. Not Claire is pregnant. Not, we have some news. Not even, I have something to tell you all. Says she's pregnant. 30 people went completely silent. I felt every single pair of eyes in that room find my face. And then his dad, before Linda could even react, before anyone could say anything kind, said, "How far along?" Marcus said, 3 months. His dad looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me, and he said, very slowly, "You've only been together 3 months." And Marcus said, "I will never forget this as long as I live. Yeah, that's why I'm not sure it's actually mine." In front of 30 people. At Thanksgiving. While I was holding my sparkling cider that cost $14 because I was trying to be responsible about the pregnancy he was currently suggesting wasn't his. The room went so quiet you could hear the football game in the other room. I put my fork down. Very carefully. I set my sparkling cider down next to my plate. I looked at Marcus, not with anger, I don't think. Just very, very directly. And I said, quietly enough that maybe only the people immediately around us heard, "I'm going to use the bathroom." And I did. I went to the bathroom. I locked the door. I ran cold water over my wrists like my mom taught me when I was little and anxious. I looked at myself in the mirror. I thought, you have 2 options right now. You can fall apart in this bathroom, or you can go back out there and let him finish falling apart for you. I fixed my mascara. I smoothed my borrowed rust-colored dress. And I walked back to the table. I ate the rest of my dinner. I answered questions about my job when his aunt asked. I helped clear plates. Marcus couldn't look at me the whole second half of dinner. I didn't say a single word about it until we were alone in his car. And then I said, very calmly, "I'm going to need you to think very hard about what you actually want. Because I know what I want, and I will be completely fine without you. But you need to decide." He said, "Claire." I said, "Not tonight. Think about it. Call me when you know." I got out of the car. I went inside. I called Mara. I said, "I need you to stay on the phone with me while I ugly cry for approximately 45 minutes. She said, "I'm already on the couch. She is the best person I know." And that was November. Marcus texted me the next morning. Not a call. A text. Which, that's a whole other thing. But the text said, "I'm sorry about last night. Can we talk today?" I waited 4 hours to respond. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. I said, "Sure. Tonight. My place." He came over. He apologized. Genuinely, it seemed. Eyes down, fidgety, kept saying he panicked, that it came out wrong, that he didn't mean it the way it sounded. I listened. I nodded. I didn't cry. I had already done my crying with Mara. This was the part where I needed to think clearly. I told him I needed him to be honest with me about where his head was at. He said he wanted to be involved. He said he was scared but that he wanted to do this. I wanted to believe him. A part of me did believe him. What I didn't know yet, what I was about to find out, was that Marcus had been having a completely separate conversation with Jessica for the past 6 weeks. I found out because of his sister, Becca. Becca is 24. She's 3 years younger than Marcus. She texted me 2 days after Thanksgiving, and I want to say, we had barely spoken before this, maybe a handful of texts, nothing real, and her text said, "Hey Claire, I know this is weird, but I think you deserve to know some things. Can we get coffee?" I stared at that text for a long time. I thought about not responding. I thought about the loyalty versus honesty thing and how messy it gets in families. I also thought about the fact that I was nearly 12 weeks pregnant and sitting in a genuinely uncertain situation, and this girl was offering me information. I said yes. We met at a coffee shop near her work. She ordered a latte. She kept turning her cup in circles on the table. I could tell she was nervous. I could also tell she had made a decision about this before she walked in. The kind of decision that costs something. She said, "Marcus and Jessica have been talking since September." I said, "Okay." She said, "Not like texting occasionally. Talking every day." I saw his phone once by accident when I was at his apartment. I didn't say anything then because I thought maybe it was nothing. But after Thursday, she stopped. Looked at her cup. After Thursday, I couldn't just not say anything. I asked her what she knew. She told me. Jessica reached out to Marcus in late August, right after we started officially dating. She told him she missed him. Marcus told Jessica that he was seeing someone new, but that he wasn't sure it was serious. He kept that going. The Jessica conversation, the "is this serious" framing, for the entire time we were together. When I told him I was pregnant, he called Jessica before he called me back. Let me say that again. When I told Marcus I was pregnant, his first call was to Jessica. Becca said, "I'm so sorry, Claire. I know you're dealing with a lot." I just kept thinking, if it were me, I would want to know. I looked at her and I thought, this person barely knows me, and she sat across from me in a coffee shop and told me something that cost her loyalty to her brother because she thought it was the right thing to do. That takes something real. I said, "Thank you. Genuinely. This matters." I drove home and I sat in my car in the parking lot for about 20 minutes, just processing, going back through everything. The way he'd say, "You're too sensitive," when I mentioned Jessica's name coming up. The way he'd never introduced me as his girlfriend. The way he'd gone so quiet on the phone when I told him about the pregnancy. I thought it was shock. And it was. But it wasn't just shock about the baby. It was shock about the situation he'd built for himself. The thing about finding out you were being lied to isn't just the lie itself. It's the reprocessing. Every memory gets a second viewing. Every moment you thought was one thing gets a new voiceover. It's exhausting in a way that's hard to explain. Like watching a movie you loved and realizing halfway through that the main character is the villain. I sat in that car and I got very, very clear on something. I wasn't going to blow this up for dramatic reasons. I wasn't going to send the screaming text or show up somewhere crying. I was going to be strategic. Not for revenge, okay. A little for revenge, but mostly because I was about to have a baby, and I needed to know exactly who Marcus was before I made any decisions about what our future looked like. I had a plan, and it required waiting for one specific moment. His family's Christmas. I kept things calm for 3 weeks. I know. You're reading that and thinking how. Honestly, I don't fully know either. There was something clarifying about knowing the truth. Like, before I knew, every interaction with Marcus had this low-level anxiety underneath it, this feeling that something was off, but I couldn't name it. After I knew, the anxiety disappeared. It was replaced with something steadier. I went to his apartment. I had dinner with him twice. I let him think everything was fine. I asked him how Jessica was once, very casually, mid-conversation, not looking up from my phone. And I watched him pause for just a half-second too long before he said, "I don't really talk to her much anymore." I said, "That's good." He relaxed. I did not relax. Becca had been texting me periodically, updating me on family conversations. Apparently, Marcus had told his parents he was handling the situation. That phrase kept coming up. The situation. His mother, Linda, had apparently told him twice that she expected him to step up. His dad was quieter about it, but clearly not thrilled with how Thanksgiving had gone. The family was fractured a bit. Some people were on Marcus's side, reading me as some outsider complication. Some were on the "Marcus handled that terribly" side. Becca was firmly in the second camp. She told me she was coming to Christmas. She told me she was going to make sure I had a seat at the table. I wore the same rust-colored dress. Mara said it was iconic. She was right. Christmas at the family house was smaller than Thanksgiving, maybe 15 people. But the important ones were all there. His parents, the siblings, the grandparents. Enough audience. Marcus and I arrived together. He seemed relaxed, a little proud, even, I think, the way someone acts when they think they've managed a situation successfully. He'd apologized. I'd seemed to accept it. The rough patch was behind them. He even held my hand when we walked in. I let him. Dinner was fine. Better than Thanksgiving, honestly. Linda was warm to me. Genuinely warm. She kept touching my arm when she passed me things, asking how I was feeling, had I been getting enough rest. She said the word grandchild at one point and looked so genuinely moved that I almost felt bad about what was coming. Almost. The moment came over dessert. Marcus's dad made a comment. Not unkind, actually. Something about how the next year was going to be a big one, and that it was good the two of us were figuring things out. He looked at Marcus pointedly when he said it. Marcus nodded. Did the responsible adult face. Said, "Yeah, I'm committed to making this work." Claire knows that. And he looked at me, and I smiled. And then I said, still smiling, in the same calm voice you used to comment on the weather, Marcus, when did you and Jessica stop talking every day? Was it before or after Thanksgiving? The table went very quiet. Not the same quiet as Thanksgiving. This was a different quality of silence. The kind that comes when everyone in the room realizes they're about to see something real. Marcus's face did something complicated. I watched him make a decision. I could actually see it happen, to try to play confused. What are you talking about? I said, I'm just asking. You told me you barely talked to her. I'm wondering when that changed. Was it when you found out I knew? Claire, you called her when I told you I was pregnant. I said it very quietly. Still calm. Still smiling, kind of. Before you called me back. I know that, Marcus. His mother said his name. His dad was very still. Marcus said, where did you hear that? And then Becca, from across the table, said, from me. I told her, and you could see him process that. His little sister, sitting 3 feet away, looking at him steadily. He pivoted to anger, which is what people do when they're caught and they don't have anywhere else to go. He said to Becca, you had no right. You told her she was lying about the pregnancy, Becca said, in front of 30 people. She deserved to know what was actually happening. Marcus said, this is between me and Claire. Linda said, Marcus. He turned to me. And here's the thing. Here's the moment I'll remember forever. He said, voice rising slightly. You're too sensitive about this. Jessica is just a friend. You're taking this way out of proportion. You're too sensitive. The exact phrase. The phrase I'd counted 4 times. Showing up again like a reflex. Like he couldn't stop himself. And this time it landed in front of his mother and his father and both of his grandparents. And everyone who had watched him suggest I was lying about his own child at Thanksgiving. Linda put down her fork. She looked at Marcus and she said, that is not how you speak about the woman who is carrying your child. And Marcus, this is where it got really something to watch. Marcus had a meltdown. Not a big, dramatic, table-flipping meltdown. A pathetically small one. The kind that's actually sadder and more revealing than rage. He started explaining, justifying, going back through the whole timeline, trying to make it make sense. Jessica was just there for support. He was scared. I was moving too fast. Claire knew what she was getting into. He wasn't ready. He wasn't. His dad said, Marcus, stop. One of those stop talking right now stops. Marcus stopped. His dad looked at me, and he said, Claire, I apologize for Thanksgiving. And I apologize for this. You didn't deserve either. I looked at this man who, 6 weeks ago, had looked at me across a table with suspicion, and I said, thank you. That means a lot. Marcus tried one more time, turned to me, lowered his voice, said, Claire, we can talk about this. And I said, very gently, very finally, I think we just did. I helped Linda clear the dessert plates. We talked about nursery colors. She showed me a photo of a crib she'd seen online. Marcus sat at the table alone for a while. I think that was the loneliest I'd ever seen a person look. And I felt, I'm going to be honest, I felt something that wasn't quite pity. More like witnessing. Like watching someone arrive at the end of something they'd built themselves. The dress, by the way, Linda told me it was a beautiful color on me. Said I looked like fall. Mara was right. It was iconic. Marcus texted me 14 times that night. Then called 4 times. Then texted some more. The progression was interesting as a document of a person in chaos. It started with apologetic, can we please talk? I know I handled this badly. And moved through. Explanatory, Jessica and I have history. You have to understand. And arrived, eventually, at a weird revisionist place where apparently I had ambushed him at a family dinner, which is a fascinating reframe for someone who opened our relationship by publicly suggesting his pregnant girlfriend was lying. I read all of them. I responded to none of them that night. I forwarded a few to Mara. She sent back reactions that made me genuinely laugh for the first time in weeks. The Jessica thing, I found out later, from Becca, had apparently been on its way to nowhere anyway. Jessica had been stringing Marcus along without any intention of getting back together. She just liked the attention. When the Christmas situation blew up and Marcus suddenly needed her to be a real option, she told him she was seeing someone. Marcus had been building his backup plan on a foundation that was never actually there. I didn't feel good about that exactly, but I didn't feel bad about it either. His friends were. This surprised me. 2 of the guys he was close with reached out to me. Not to take sides, not to make it weird, just to say they were sorry about how things had gone. One of them, a guy named Tom who I'd met maybe 3 times, sent a text that just said, "For what it's worth, we all think you're handling this with more grace than any of us would. Take care of yourself." I saved that text. Linda called me. She called me, not Marcus, to ask if I was doing okay. We talked for 40 minutes. She asked about my due date, whether I had a good doctor, whether my own family was nearby. She said, and I want to be precise about this because it mattered. She said, "Whatever happens between you and Marcus, this baby is my grandchild and you are not alone in this." I cried after I hung up. The good kind of cry. The kind where you feel something actually release. Marcus and we are co-parenting. That's what we're doing. It is not romantic. It is not what I would have chosen 3 months ago when I was standing in a Target bathroom counting positive pregnancy tests. It is functional and increasingly civil. He comes to some of the appointments. He is trying, I think, in the specific limited way that Marcus tries at things. I have kept my expectations calibrated carefully. Some days it's fine. Some days I'm exhausted and sad, and I miss the version of events where I got to fall in love slowly and plan things and not have to think about custody arrangements at 29. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But here's what's also true. I have a room in my apartment that I painted sage green with Mara on a Saturday in January. We painted and ate takeout Thai, and she made fun of my painting technique the whole time, and I laughed so hard I almost knocked over the roller. The crib is assembled in the corner. There's a mobile above it that Linda sent. Little wooden animals, the kind that turn slowly in the light. I have a doctor I love who calls me by my first name and answers my 11 p.m. anxiety texts at a very reasonable frequency. I have a body that is doing something I still don't have the full words for. I have Becca, who checks in on me more than my actual siblings do, which is its own funny thing. I'm not healed. I don't know if healed is even the right frame for something that's still happening. I am still in the middle of this. I am still figuring out what this family we're accidentally building actually looks like. But I put on a rust-colored dress and I cut into my turkey, and I did not fall apart. And when the moment came, I asked one quiet question and let Marcus do the rest. "You're too sensitive," he said, in front of his whole family. For the last time.